Good evening to you and welcome to this program of Rodney Groundings. I'm your host, Dion Abrams, and it's a pleasure being with you after a lapse of a number of months. My guest this evening is, as you can see, Brother Tacuma Ogunseye, and so Brother Ogun, welcome to Rodney Groundings.
As usual, it's a pleasure. We haven't been here for a while, and I know there has been a great concern for viewers, and I think we have to offer them some extensive explanation. And if I probably as an honor to begin it.
Yeah, sure, you can.
I think first we have to remind viewers that our first set of absence was tied up in the fact that the WP had started a public meetings campaign in the African communities in order to get them what we call battle ready to deal with all the political challenges that we are facing under the PPP's regime. And those meetings in the main were being held on Sundays afternoon going into the evening. And that and those meetings took us away from having regular programs, and we had to substitute that with other programs and sometimes replays. So that was the first obstacle that we faced. And then we reached a point where those meetings ended, and they ended in a way that we, the WPA, did not anticipate it would have ended. And to be very frank, it ended in a way that disunited the party. And in the context of that, we felt on a party program like this, if we face the public, we will be forced to address some of those issues. And in the context of a pending local government elections, we felt that we will have to write it out. So we had to write out another set of weeks until the local government election ended. And then as in politics, once parties direct the people to act and to behave in a certain way, each side will promote their narratives and their sense of what victory constitutes. And we felt that we couldn't, soon after the elections, come here to speak to our viewers when people's emotions has been high, and the reality of the local government elections haven't settled down. We felt we need a period to have that settled down. And then unfortunately, by last week, myself and Dion come down with the flu. And as you will notice, our voices will reflect that. So even though we don't have good voices, we decided we have to return this week and to continue the direct programs. I think that is an honest and objective assessment that explains our protracted absence over that period of time.
The public meetings that were held, what was the primary focus of those meetings? They were sent live. All of the meetings were live on Facebook and so on. But for those who are accustomed to being on television, give us a sense of what the message was.
Well, I got to try to recreate the context. In our assessment in the WP, and I think it was generally an assessment across the African community, that the PPP bullyism and the blows that they've been directed to the African community, the breaking down of homes and knuckling them, that they have gone, out of the way to drive a certain degree of fear and intimidation in the African community. And we in the WP are listening to our people, and we hear people actually raising the question of what have happened to us? Are we so defeated that we can't do anything? And the WPA leadership decided that we have to make an intervention, and the form of the intervention is to keep a number of public meetings, highlighting all our grievances as an African community, and to urge our constituents to get battle ready so that we could begin to fight back against the PPP. And in the context of that, when we went to Buxton, because we were making these points at previous meetings before Buxton, but in politics, the enemy also choose when to engage him. The government decided to engage us at Buxton, and I think part of the reason they choose to engage us at Buxton is twofold. At that meeting, we had invited the leader of the opposition, Brother Aubrey Norton, and then Buxton itself, WPA going to Buxton and urging people to become battle ready. I think the government felt they couldn't ignore it. And the country knew what happened. I was charged and all kinds of things. But the reason for the campaign was clear. We said that we're fighting against the PPE bullyism. We're fighting to get African Guyanese equitable exposure to your oil money. We're fighting to get a GCOM, because GCOM has become one of the most partisan election commissions since 1992. It's a reversal, and we are fighting against that. We are fighting for a new voters list. We were fighting for biometrics. We were fighting for constitutional reform to end military politics. We were fighting for the WPA proposal, which Clive Thomas argued many years ago, for cash transfer of $5,000 to Guyanese households. So all of those issues, we were fighting about. So our campaign was directed to that. But we said that if we're going to spend all of the political energies at a time when the government have summoned us to local government elections, which we know they're only doing it because they got some clear objectives, that we should turn the local government elections against them, and instead of going forward with a normal election engagement, we turn into a wider political engagement, and instead of fighting to retain narrow political space, we call for national uprising and national resistance and African uprising, so we could widen the political space to the opposition of the African community. That was the logic behind our campaign and our message.
In particular, the GCOM scenario, because there was the WPA in its campaign touted the idea that with the configuration of GCOM, all the machinations, the getting rid of people whom they believe are not aligned to the PPP, and the inserting through nefarious means of the top positions of the people whom the PPP find itself comfortable with, that it was a part of the plan of the PPP to rig these elections and to give the credence to Jack Bureau's touting that we are going to sweep all the major towns in the country. And we noticed the way they were carrying on by bullying Afro-Guyanese who were being offered the part-time jobs and so on. Every time there was a meeting, they were sent text messages telling them that they had to be at the meeting when they were had to put on their jerseys. So they were actually laying the groundwork to justify any skullduggery that GCOM would have likely perpetrated in the elections. But do you think that our highlighting these possibilities had any along with other things, might have had some impact in GCOM taking a different look at the elections and being more moderate in terms of the excesses which they would have? exercise.
You see, that is a very complex and difficult equation to decipher, given the way the narrative developed in the country and given the way the opposition engages Jagdeo and responds to Jagdeo's declarations. You see, firstly, I agree the opposition is right that for the PPP, these elections had some clear objectives. And probably the single most important objective, and is the one that the PPP haven't been touting, is to give them a runoff to test their rigging machinery for the 2025 elections. I think that is the main single political objective. Now, the PPP don't love our local government elections. They were in power from 92. And they probably held 2 local government elections for over 10 years. So they're not a love our local government elections. But then when they begin to promote local government elections, you got to ask yourself as opposition, what is the motive, what is the driving force behind the PPP? And the opposition have been reading it different ways. But I think there has been a general consensus, at least in one area, they want to, test their rigging machinery. Now, I think the PNP had more than one objective. So I would say that was the probably main political objective. I think they were coming under pressure from the international community and so forth on the conduct of GCOM and democracy in the country. And I think they wanted to use the elections to defeat the opposition argument that GCOM, as it is being constituted, which is the most partisan election commission since 92, could deliver fair and free elections. So I think that was another objective for them politically. Remember, local government elections are low-level elections, so you have not much to lose. I think another challenge they were using the local government elections to deal with is the whole question of the voter list, which will become critical in the 2025 elections. And I think they set out to have the local government elections and to have the opposition participate with the same rigors, which will make it difficult for the opposition come 2025 to argue that the bloated list can't deliver fair and free elections. I also believe that they were engaging the opposition argument for biometrics, and they were using the local government elections to show without biometrics, you could win some areas, I could win some areas. And as the American ambassador or former ambassador, I don't know where Lynch is right now, whether she's still ambassador or former ambassador. Last week she praised the Guyana local government elections as a demonstration of Guyanese democracy. She gave high praises for it, even knowing the way in which the government used taxpayers' money to corrupt the process. But we, the opposition, give legitimacy to it by signing on to it. So for me, the PPP achieved all its major political objectives. Now, the opposition was making a lot of weather of the PPP saying it's want to destroy the opposition strongholds. I got a different view. Politics is like war. You have command centers and the 2 commanders, watching the force. No commander will tell you exactly what is his objective. He will tell you, I can attack you in the east to get you preoccupied in the east, then he can attack you in the west. So you can't literally take everything Jagdeo say or the PPP command say as their objective. You got to try to sift through it to recognize whether those are real objectives. And I don't think the PPP believe that they could beat the PNC in Georgetown or they could beat the PNC in Linden. I don't think that was on the card. I think PPP know they haven't corrupted the African community sufficiently enough that they could win and take over the PNC strongholds. Or what they wanted to do is to drive fear the PNC to come to these elections and legitimize the elections. And the best way to do it is to tell them you're going after the constituencies in the municipalities, and you drive fear into them, and they come signing on to the process, and you say, I get to be kept what they want. So they listen to the PLC, when listen to the WPA, come to proposal, because the PVP entrapped them into believing their survival lies in coming and engaging in these elections. And I think that is basically the PPP and JAPIO game plan. It was never so much that they believe that they have beaten down the African community, that we don't go outside there, a large number wasn't go outside and vote PPP. Of course, they've recruited a number of people that give good, good public shows answer. But I think in hard political calculations, that argument was to get the PNC to the polls, and I think it worked.
Okay, so in essence, the groundwork you were saying has been laid for any act that is to be committed in 2025 to be legitimized by pointing to local government elections 2023. But within that scenario, people are saying that the PPP did not expect the amount of vigilance that was exercised in the local government elections, and so we had incidents where their agents stormed polling stations and tried to do things that they didn't expect that kind of vigilance, and so even though they might have wanted to exercise some rigging, that might have been thwarted by the presence of the opposition. How legitimate is that?
Again, these are not easy things to work out. Because I'm a hard person. I've been at this business over 50 years. I can't believe that the PPP, knowing everything that they do and the way the politics have been unfolding, the threat to the PNC, to wipe them out, that they're going to expect the PNC to be extremely vigilant. I find it counterproductive to believe. Okay? I do believe that the vigilance creates some problems for them if they had, whatever they had to do. But I don't think they didn't anticipate that. It's like war. The enemy sends soldiers up, to check you out. So you're not surprised by that. So I can't buy into the theory that the PPP was surprised at the vigilance of the opposition. The PPP expect the opposition to be vigilant. But of course, the vigilance of the opposition also create problems for the PPP. Like when in a battle of war, when the enemies look near your base, it create problems for you. So that is how I would see it. But I think we sometimes, here, you have to be careful, You have to be careful with propaganda. Each party and each side is engaged in propaganda war, which is a legitimate part of politics. Everybody got a spin narrative to suit their causes. And sometimes I think we are caught up in our own propaganda. And we begin to see things the way we sell it to the population, and we don't see it, as objective commanders say, look, this propaganda, but we know the reality is this. And I'm trying to force us more to get to the reality, because if you don't understand what the people are doing, then you're not going to come up with the right solutions to defeat them. Now, if for some reason the African community had turned June 12th into the national resistance and African uprising, you think the U.S. ambassador could say that the 12th was an expression of democracy? The whole country be destabilized, and those areas that we in contest are in the municipal parties, we telling them you ain't changing nothing until they get around the elections. So you create a political turmoil in the equation where you could press your other issues, but we go in the way Jagdeo set it up and come out with the normalcy that Jagdeo and the Americans want, and we have nothing to carry over to another phase of the struggle. And we now left, we try to convince our people that we didn't lose the elections, we win in some ways. I'm very offended in the way in which our side is dealing with this problem. Because I can't see, if you're fighting for 80 positions, one side gone with 66 positions and you're left with 14, how you could tell the world and tell people that you win? You lose. No. I could understand you in politics. At the PNC or APM, you have lost the elections to the PPP even before July 12th, because over 200, I think, and 90 something areas, they didn't put no candidate, therefore the PP had to walk over. So right away from then you lose the elections. So you can't tell people that you're winning the elections. Okay, you could say as political people, we recognize that, but we had some other more smaller objectives, and the major objective for us was to remain in control of the municipalities that we present control. So for us, the elections engagement was not normal engagement, it was a narrow engagement to hold on to those places. Okay, that's fair. Let us examine it. You're going with 5, you come out with 3. You barely scrape home. Okay? It is like a boxer, man. A boxer, 2 boxers in a major fight. The other one saying, mounting up, I'm going to beat you up, I'm going to knock you out, blah, blah, blah. And you know, in the fight, you win 3 rounds or 4 rounds, he win 8, but he knock you out. So now you turn to celebrate the fact that you get knocked out as a victory. That is exactly what we outside is doing. They say, look, we don't get knocked out. And to the extent that we get knocked out is a victory. Now that's good for your psyche and that's good for your supporters, but it won't last long. Because when those local government institutions will be meeting in another few days or a week or so, the PPP will be controlling 66 and you controlling 14. So that is the real politics on the ground. You're not in a better position than you end up. But if you are turn the thing into a rebellion against them on the day, you have to answer all the problems that you try to answer in defending limited space. So I think that is how we have to begin to see these things. And I think it is important because we on this program over 2 years ago have been arguing that we have committed that to help the African people to be effective against the PPP, we have to develop African communal politics and move the African community from 100% dependence on the PNC in all political matters. And we have been arguing here that there will be times when the community political interest and the party political interest may not coincide, and we have to public part issues for a moment, but we have to develop both things. And I think that the local government elections demonstrate the need for that separation. And we have to, because I don't know, we know that we can't change our people's political culture overnight. If people got over 65 years and this kind of political dependence from party, we in WPA can't come and tell them to change and they're going to change overnight. There's a process. But as we struggle, we have to use the opportunity to revisit this thing and to show people the strengths and the weaknesses of our argument. And I think that when persons look at what we were saying 2 years ago from this program and what we come up with before the local government elections, to turn it into resistance, and uprising against the PPP, and we have called upon the African community, not the PNC and IWP alone. We ask the African community, which include the political, cultural, religious leadership, to take on this project. Because we're trying to build community involvement that is bigger and outside the parties. It was consistent with our line that we started 2 years ago of trying to widen the African political space by trying to get wider forces in our community to begin to take control of some space in the politics that allow the party, when it's running the problems, it will have the time to correct itself, but we don't become victims of the weaknesses that the party may experience at a particular time. So I will say, well, I'm disappointed. I am not broken because I never expect overnight results, but I think we have to learn the objective lessons. I am more concerned with learning the objective lessons. And rather than tell Africans that we did well at the elections, I rather tell them that we barely scraped in, we did badly, and we got to double up and triple up our political efforts. I am playing no games with them and they are massaging the ego. We did badly, both as a people and as a leadership. And if we continue along the road, our goose scope, because we already, the way we engage this local government elections, we tighten the rope on the neck. And if we don't start coming kicking, it's over. The people dominating for the next 15 years. I want it is over. I have no doubt about that. And I bring in 50 plus years of political experience. Anytime the PPP is able to hold on to this government for the next 10, 15 years, Africans get wiped out. We will be second-class citizens. You can't catch up economically. That is what facing me. So we don't have the time to play the political games that political parties may be willing to play. And I'm telling you, the PNC will be faced with the same problems they face with the local government elections. And I'm telling you, they want to make the same decisions. Now, when the PPP will face a problem with it, you have to contest all the rig elections in order to maintain the PPP as a number 2 political force. Even though people were criticizing him and so, that was erratic. That despite the rigging, I is the number 2 and the PNC will take a similar position. Despite all of the rigging against them, for them the bottom line as a political party, we are the number 2 and we are prepared to take everything they throw at us. We've got to wait for 40 years, we're going to wait 40 years as number 2. Something will change in favor. So I know for sure what play out in the local government elections. I will be surprised if as an African community and as a Guyanese nation, we are able to rise above that and to turn it against the PPP and deliver a victory for ourselves and the people in 2025. If I tell you I believe that is possible, I will be lying to you. I want to be straight with these matters. At my age, I too old to play certain games. I go home to the ancestors probably soon. At least I want to live with a good conscience.
But is it, do you think that, were the communities that we visited sensitized in any way to these possibilities that you spoke about? We talked about the domination of the PPP and their strategy of basically decimating the African community. And one of the processes that we highlighted is the act of seizing African lands through the Minister of Labor inserting himself into the cooperatives and overthrowing the leadership because he's following the dictate of Jack Deal. And I have from the Guyana Chronicle sometime in March this year, they put up a number of areas that were advertised for becoming land registration areas. And surprisingly, one of the areas that would have been advertised and is now under the control of the CHPA and the Lands and Survey Department is the back of Two Friends. Two Friends is an African community that was legitimately bought by Africans. So they gave 1 month notice for objections, and I guess nobody objected. So Two Friends, the back of Two Friends would have already been gone, along with a number of other villages along the coast. So the march to seize lands from people is an ongoing one, and our highlighting the fact that the PPP is on this march came to the fore when Jack Dew accused, but he didn't say the WPA, he would not even mention the WPA, but he was saying that fear was driven into the African community by the chief whip of the PNC, Jones, and others, by telling them that the PPP wanted to take away their lands and all of these things, which in fact is something that is already in train. Are people that stupid not to realize that this is the PPP's march?
No,
People have to educate them about.
No, I don't think. I think people are very clear that that's a PPP march, and you had asked the only question, what was the response to our message? And nobody who had experienced what happened in Guyana soon after the Buckstone had any doubt of the transformative effects our campaign had on the psyche of the African people and the entire nation. It drove fear and panic into the rulers. So there's no question of whether the WPA campaign had a positive effect on the communities, wide and far. So I think that was clear. But you see, in politics, you have to build up or you have to execute. Okay, you create an expectation. You ask people to get battle ready. People buy onto it. And the people expect you to prosecute the case to the end. Now, if you fail to prosecute the case to the end, you really got to give people a good explanation why. And I know, I probably have wrote the first letter after June 12th and sent it to the press about the elections. I sent the Starbuck News a letter expressing my views on the elections on June 13th. To date, none of the public medias, both electronic and otherwise, have ever carried the letter. Because it is not in the interest to carry it. So we live in a country where, as African people, we don't control the political discourse to the extent that we need to control. Of course, we are in a better place now with the electronic media, the social media, and the Cams TV and Politics 101. We are in a better place. But in the printed media, we don't call shots there. The point I'm making is that any campaign to be successful, you have to continue to execute the plan. You can't bring people to a point of expectations, and when they expect you coming down to the bottom, because that's how struggle goes. We start a campaign like 3 months before local government elections. Everybody would expect us come down to the last 4 weeks in the local government elections, the WPA campaign would intensify, because now you're fighting with the heart and the minds of the people. You put the maximum pressure to make sure that the thing goes the way you want it to go. But if you back off for whatever reason, okay, even if it is justified, you create a crisis in confidence between you and people. And you have a struggle now to justify whether you're right, you're wrong, and so forth and so forth. Which for me, speaking as a WPA person, I think we should never got ourselves tangled up with. We had a clear line of march and we said to the African community, and we should be the last. The WPA should be the last to abandon the line, because we set a dangerous and unhelpful precedent in our relationship with the African community and the rest of the country. That is my position. I am of the firm view that we are political people. We try our best not to make the PNC life miserable in the campaign after they decided going in. We have never held a meeting in any of the 5 municipalities that the PNC said they're going in to defend space. The OPN never held a meeting in Georgetown. We never held a meeting in Amsterdam, never held a meeting in Linden, Maburumo, or Baltico. So the PNC had no challenge from WPA activity in those strategic areas. And that is our concession to them. And I don't think the WPA should have gone beyond that. That is enough. What I am disappointed in is that the PNC make no concession to us. Now, I could understand they had the interest. I could understand they decided going into elections, but they decided going into the elections, but we also will promote resistance after we don't vote. They make not one concession to us. And we destroy our own campaign in order to make concessions to them. And of course, we know the nature of the country. I mean, I listen to some of my comrades, and sometimes I'm amazed at people's argument. Everybody knows the elections in this country. That is, I mean, talk about black people's story. No one knows the people in the unions. People's final attitude will come down to the last 4 weeks to the elections. And it is at that point the party influence is very strongest. So I will not be surprised coming down to the elections, a lot of black people coming to me, we're going to be the people, we can't start the elections. I expect that. And I will tell them what's my position. At the end of the day, is they got to take the foot and go in those polling booths, and they got to take the hand and mark the X. I have no control over that. So even if I tell them don't vote, ultimately I have no control. They still have control. But what I have control on is the consistency of my position. And when time pass, I could say to y'all, this is what y'all do when we will tell you to do it. But when you destroy your own position, you leave with nothing. And in fact, you put yourself in a worse position dealing with the PNC and the PNC logic. The PNC political logic is not the PVP political logic. There's the logic of these big parties. The PNC know in political terms, if they tell black people to jump in the ocean and drink cyanide, in political terms, the majority of us can go and drink this cyanide. That is the political reality. Therefore, if black people come and complaining to me that they got to do the party, they say, okay, do what the party tell you, there's your problem, that I can't control that. But I could control my attitude towards the party, when the party tell you that that is not the right way to go. But I can't make you do what you want you to do. And once I am clear with that, I have no responsibility for people's behavior. Because in a real way, I have no control over it. And that is my attitude to these things.
So when you say that, you're saying that you have no control. Does control equate to influence?
Yes, but control is more than influence. Mm-hmm. You can have influence, but in politics and elections, control is important because I can influence people, but at the end of the day, you want them to vote in a certain way and not to vote in a certain way. Influence alone is not important. You still have to control over the thinking process, and the behavior becomes important. So yes, influence is one aspect of it, but I think ultimately control is more important.
All right. So you have variance with the position which ultimately suggested that, okay, the PNC has decided to get on board, that the message of a day of resistance should be not continued in the same vein, in light of the fact that it might influence the voting population and affect the outcome of the elections for the PNC.
That is not my business. I'm WPA. The PNC makes not one concession to us. You know, we have to understand as a party, this thing with a political party is a dangerous animal that got to be tamed. The PNC made not one concession to us. And we made umpteen concession. We never went into any of their strategic areas and keep one meeting. At our meetings, we try our best not to be antagonistic to them. What more could we do? You got to destroy yourself to please them? No way. Not Ogunseye. No way. And my interest is not to please the PNC. My interest is to work with the PNC and work with the wider opposition so that we could defeat the PPP. But if the PNC want to commit suicide, why should I go around the world committing suicide with them? What was the state of the PNC, the party? They entered the elections divided. At the last 2 days before the election, some of them jump on board, and now they didn't know whether they win. The more divided than when they start. Now, what don't we could do anything about that? That's not our business. So we have to get out of the head. The PNC got its own business, its own aspirations, its own objectives, which they have to pursue as a party. The WPA have to be clear. We have our own aspirations, our own objectives, which we have to pursue as a party. But in pursuing it, we have our eyes on the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is not simply to defeat the PPP, Because you could defeat the PPP as we defeated them in 2015, and in 5 years, they got back in power. The bigger picture is to change the governance system in this country in the context of oil. Because oil and gas have changed the reality. And to shift Africans and Amerindians in a strategic position that they have equal access to that tremendous wealth which will come every year after each year. That is to transform the equation. So it is not simple an election engagement. For the WPA, we pass that. We want end of the take all system. We want share governance, and all we sit at the table and share this money. All we fight. I mean, that is the WPA position. But we're not a major party, so we could say it and they will laugh at us. But I put our position very clear. And it's our honest position. And we believe that the Guyanese nation will only be saved when the nation will reach a point where it could face one another and to say, and especially African and Indian leadership will say, do we want to make the best of this oil money and this wealth that the gods or the ancestors have bestowed upon us, or do we want to make the mess of it and to go down the road of destruction? The way we answer that question is what will determine the future of Guyana and the future of our generations to come. And for us in the WPA, defeating the PPP is just a small part of the mission. The bigger part of the mission is to move the country to a position of shared governance and equitable distribution of the oil wealth. All the time the politics of when people give us a divide and rule, we understand the need for it, we understand all the arguments about democracy and all kinds of things, but we're not stupid. We know that the amount of money you're talking here in Guyana, soon Guyana will produce 1 million barrels of oil. And you know how much money you're talking about it? Where's the African and American stakes in all of this? So that is what this struggle is about, not about defeating the PPP. The PPP is just a problem for the moment. So we want it to be clear in the African community and nation that the WP have gone past trying to defeat the PPP. The PPP will have to be defeated or forced into political realism. But our major concern is not them. And that's why we're calling on African people to get battle ready and begin to fight this battle to get your hand on this oil wealth. That is the challenge facing this generation of African people, African leadership, not defeating the PPP. The PPP is minor matter.
Okay, so every country has an administration, and what the PPP has been doing is consolidating its power in every facet of the country to suppress African resistance in the main and to take control of this bargaining wealth that you're talking about. Now you're saying that they are not of the major concern, but they are the major player who are doing all of these things that are setting the conditions for the erosion of the rights and the power of the African, the Amerindian, and so on. So how is it that they are not the focus for us?
No, I'm not saying that they're not the focus, but they can't be the major focus. Because we have to understand the PPP could disappear tomorrow. And the balance of forces in the world who control the world and the oil and the global economy could have design for this country, whether the PNC there or the PPP there. So as a nation, you have to get past the limits of the political conditioning, and not that the PPP and the PNC are important. They're part of our reality. But the politics can't be tied up with them. We have to begin to see things beyond them and to set standards as a nation, okay, and outcomes that is beyond them. You know, and I'm saying that if we get bogged up with just wanting to defeat the PPP like that, they're likely to spend all your rest of your time trying to defeat them. But if you follow me logic, Me dealing with defeat you. I got some strengths in the equation. I use any strengths to achieve the objectives. I mean, I want China, and I don't want to repeat what we went saying, okay, in the street corner here, because, street corner politics and the studio politics are different. But I'm saying, in the equation, each ethnic community got different strengths. And the African people have to be smart. That if we are saying that if we don't stop this runaway train with the PPP, in the next 2 years, I will be that defining the union, where we sense a timing, that we going to lose it for all times. Then the PPP is not the problem. The problem is we stopping them. You see, the PPP is only a problem because we allow them to be a problem. You really believe the PPP can control if the majority of black people want to wake up in the morning and say, to hell with this nonsense, okay, we're fighting in a certain way. You think the PPP could do what they like? They do what they like because we're not fighting. So, and we see them as a problem rather than seeing ourselves as the problem.
Well, that explains it. I mean, in terms of our take on how we deal with the problem as against the focus as the PPP. So you were saying that we as a people are not doing what we ought to do in order to overcome these excesses of the PPP, which puts a clear light on it. So how do we get the people to understand that they have this power, that they can, the people of Plaisance, for instance, let's take Plaisance for example, the feeling and the emotion and the kind of energy that was displayed in Plaisance, clearly Jagdio understands that the people of Plaisance sees the PPP and see him in a certain light. Right? People see him in that light. Now, if you get that kind of response and it becomes a groundswell in all of the African communities that people are beginning and willing to challenge the status quo and to raise hell, if you want to put it that way, can we bring that change that you're talking about?
Of course, let me tell you something. If the PNC change course tomorrow, it turns this whole ball game differently. Because in real terms, the PNC is the major spokesperson for the African community. And if the PNC shift the politics to one of more confrontation, overnight the engagement change, and Jagdio understand that, and they got to behave different, and our people on the ground will behave different.
So what is preventing, it's an unfair question to you, but what's preventing the PNC from, Desmond Hype was clear in his position that, if things didn't go the way that it's supposed to be, in a logical fashion, that the country will be ungovernable. We see no sense of resistance from the PNC at this time. We have been calling on the people to be battle ready. We have made a call for them to take action in their own interest. And we have highlighted situations across the world, in Myanmar and all the other places, where people are being treated unfairly.
And that's France,
and they've taken the situation into their own hands in defense of themselves. But we are not seeing that movement here in Guyana. And you were saying the major player is what is preventing them from going in that direction?
Well, I only could speculate because I really don't know PNC internal business.
Yeah.
But as a political actor in the same space with them, I have a duty to analyze them like how they will analyze us, and to try to understand what is affecting our ally. Now, everybody concede that the PNC internal division is a major factor. I will concede that. The more united, it becomes easier to do things. But I don't think that in itself explains the degree of weakness in the PNC. I have been talking to PNC people, and they can't offer me any significant explanation. They are at loss, as I am at loss, as to what is happening in the party. I know many persons had high expectations of Aubrey and his leadership. The fact that he is a person who is street force, he knows the party well. Nobody can question his credentials as an organizer. He is by training a political scientist, so he's not like Ranger, who's a military man by training. So he has shot a Corbin and Vincent. Martin is come from the old school, and he brings to bear historical PNC knowledge and strength to current situation. So in a way, one would say probably he was the best person to lead the party. And I know a lot of people who supported Aubrey is raising questions as to what is happening to Aubrey. And again, I'm going on dangerous grounds because I'm very frank with these matters. I have been in politics long enough and I know these players. I know how they respond to me personally, both publicly and privately. I know some of them don't like me as a market man. They don't see me as equal to them. Therefore, they don't believe after 50 years they got a right, to question them or to put them on trial. So I'm telling you all of this and between all of this in this kind of assessment. So I know what I'm dealing with. And I know that Aubrey may not feel that I got any right to in public try to decipher his problems. But people are saying, PNC people are saying that they don't understand what is going on with Aubrey. People are saying that Aubrey get buyout. Now, in Guyanese politics, we throw around the thing to politicians very loosely. And I don't want to give precedence to that because it's something that, it's hard to prove one way or the other. Some people say the Americans tie Ihan. Well, I know, and I can speak one know, I know in Corbin time, Corbin hands was tied by the Americans. I don't know to what extent the Americans tie Martin Han. I don't know. It's only he and the PNC leadership could really bring the country up to date. That something is fundamentally wrong because Aubrey must know that his challenges that he has in the party would not go away easily, and the best way to get those challenges go away or to nullify the negative effects of those challenges is to be more militant on the ground and to get his supporters in the party feeling a sense of strength, and the elements in the party who is anti-Norton will be put under pressure to deal with this new reality. His line of march is making it easier for the anti-Norton elements, to crush him. And he must know. I don't have to tell Aubrey over there. Aubrey's a political scientist. He was throw scorn on me and ask who the hell is you going to say? Trying to lecture me on politics. I teach at a university. So I know I ran the risk of scorn being thrown on me. But as you ask the question, I'm a political person, I have to try to offer some public explanation. And I don't see anything sensible to justify Aubrey the PNC behavior at present. I don't know. That's the best I can say.
Now, spontaneous response to the affronts, whether political or otherwise. A youngster was killed in France, and he wasn't the first. Last year there was another youngster killed and so on. And people decided that enough was enough. And all across the country, they took to the streets demanding that a country that upheld and touted that it was not racist and so on, found itself confronting a situation that speaks to racism. Now, what is it that is going to break the camel in terms of, we have Mocha, we have them jumping into our co-ops, we have Aslington there, they're in Melanie, they're all over the country taking over the cooperatives. They have begun extrajudicial killings again and so on. What will break the camel's back?
Why it's hard to tell. You see, those countries are developed, quote-unquote developing democracies. And in those developed democracies, you see how people respond. Democracy can only work when the masses of those countries are prepared to defend the democratic principles. But what the Americans and the US is trying to, and the PPP and them is trying to do to us in Guyana, especially to the African community, is defining democracy and correct political behavior in a way that will make us slaves again. So if Africans say, look, politically we come into the streets in our numbers to demonstrate and to register protest, it has been seen as the worst possible thing could ever happen in the country. We ain't born nothing yet, we ain't start born nothing. But just to come out in our numbers to make a political statement, we have been told for years that this is not necessary, this is not democracy. You got played by the rules. And that goes contrary to our historical experience. We've been every important political development in this country through public protest and struggle. So when a people, whether a local enemy or a foreign enemy, trying to deprive you of your political history, they're trying to make you weak, and they're trying to make you, get you in a position where you will become a slave again. And you're seeing in Britain and them countries in Europe, the so-called advanced democracies, that people are coming out and defending the democracy. And those democracies have to live with that reality. And that is what creates a balance in the system. But in Guyana, there is no defense in the democracy. So you really don't have democracy. The people can spend all the money where they want to spend it. They engage in a local government elections where they buy out people and so. And not one single protest. Not one union call a strike. So how do you defend democracy? We don't have the... Look. I remember Walter used to say a thing to us on the street corners. He said when the Burnham and the PNC finish with black people, they will not be able to defend themselves. I mean, this is not something I like to say in the present context, but the reality is before us. The party make us so dependent upon them. They strip us of our organic capacity to fight and to defend principles and to just adhere to paramountcy of the party. And so depending on the party, but when the party can't defend me, we're helpless. And this is what we're seeing unfolding before us. That culturally, we are being stripped of our capacity to defend ourselves by our own party. And the PPP understand that, and now they're in power, they're tightening the screws and beating the hell out of us. Now we ask how we can stop it. We can't stop it in my judgment. I ain't no God. I only could offer a judgment as a person they run along. This matter got to be tackled by the African community and forces outside the PNC leadership, and probably forces within the PNC who could move beyond the limitations of the leadership and begin to kick ass in the African community and begin to kick the PPP ass and force the country on a road of confrontation. We have to shortcut it. We can't wait for the evolutionary response that takes 6, 10, 15, 20 years. We have to shortcut this thing. And people with rightful manners, mine, have to understand, look man, the world is full of examples where you could hasten political confrontation. We got more trained soldiers outside the army than we got in the army. I always hear this, and I always hear this, some great legacy of boredom. I always hear all kinds of things. You know? And if you have all of this, and you can't find a response to tell the PPP, look, stop this nonsense, let me sit down and talk as reasonable people, then you use the problem, not the PPP. This is the fault I want to go here for this program.
Yeah, but even Vladimir Putin was challenged. Soldiers marching toward Moscow.
I already said that, you know, I go flex the most of the day understand that, you know,
you have to compromise. So, unless you demonstrate
a capacity. Nobody take you serious. That's the problem.
and Sierra Leone will come out and talk all kinds of stupidness.
Here the African people, when they come from the party, outside the party, they say the hell was it. This is like the market, so things in Guyana begin to change rapidly overnight. Because I'm telling you, the PPP is smart. The PPP doesn't want to lose control of the oil, their money. Those who understand money and power, and they are prepared to share it 50-50 rather than to lose it. It is we in yet understand. And I don't know what game we side play because you asked me about Norton. I don't know where Norton stand when he reach a point here in the PNC where they're saying no to the take-all politics. And having said no to the take-all politics, the next thing means that the 2025 election has to be fought under a new constitution where there's no winners and losers. I don't know if there's where they're in the politics. I know that is the direction where the WP is going. But of course, the WP thinks these lads have learned me. I have learned it could be very funny. But anyway, if the PNC doesn't come to that logic, it makes it easy for the PPP. But once the PNC says, Americans say, yeah, we must share this power. Okay, we come along to them. We want to end the military system. We want a share of power at the executive level. Okay. And we want it for the next 20 elections. The game change. It's simple as that. If the PNC wants to play the game, when the dog of the board is at the most seriously in school, the dog got a piece of board in his mouth, and you go over, everybody see that the dog, piece of the body, what is that, you use the board. Now, the PNC may be playing dog of the board politics. They want to get to replace the PPP, to do exactly what the PPP do, call all the shots. Now, if that is their party politics, then they're sacrificing the fundamental interests of African people. And I got a problem with that. I have a problem with that, and I can't, after 50 odd years of struggle, face black people in the young generation and tell them that there's any solution for them in the context of oil and this big money. You? We want oil, but give me 50%, give me share, man. And that is why African politics got to be directed to, I don't know, the party politics. The party might say, we want to be the opposition for the next 40 years, and sometimes we don't win.
Yeah, but in that time, what happens to the people
they don't care
you claim to represent?
They don't care. What is important is the party, not the people.
But the PPP itself was never defeatist in terms of its... You mentioned Jagan going to elections and so on. He always promised to boycott, but he always went. But the PPP was never passive in terms of its resistance against the PPP administration. They did all manner of things, burned bridges, burned cane fields, destroyed sugar mills, every part of the rice industry, in the commercial industry, that is the place to think. And we are simply sitting back and allowing every conceivable advantage to be taken upon us, and we are offering no resistance. And people like you and people like me speak by Jagdio, are targeted because the message, it's comfortable. The kind of approach that the PNC is taking is what they're comfortable with. But the moment you try to get people to understand that this is not going to work, that you got to fight, and if you don't fight, then you're not going to win anything for yourselves. That is a message that they don't want to hear. The PPP is very clear. Look, man, we have said over this program. Jagdio rule, I've studied Jagdio from the time he arrived into the presidency, and I think Jagdio have studied Burnham, you have studied Japan, and you have mastered both of them. And I think that Jagdio got a simple, and Jagdio fundamentally and psychologically is a coward. I mean, I have been in the martial arts and studying the human mind and battle and all kinds of things for the sense of a little child. I think I got a good sense of human mental construct when it comes to war and struggle. And Jagdio is profoundly a coward. But the thing about cowards, when they got power, they use power in a ruthless way to protect and to hide the fear, the cowardliness nature of them. And what Jagdio carefully worked out is that, look, what you got to do with the Guyanese opposition, and given the nature of political culture in the country and the African
people's political dispensation is that you put a high price on the most simplest achievable thing in the context of political democracy. We have grown up understanding political democracy that if trade unions, have to use the trade unions, as a means to improve their wages and to improve their social conditions. And one of the basis of that is strikes and threats of strikes. And a case where, the major employer of workers now in the country is government is a major employer. What job does to do is to make put on strike a high price that the trade union leadership and the political opposition is not prepared to pay. So once you put a high strike price on that, then you have no problem. You see? Protests and street protests are important instruments in defending democracy and promoting people's social advancement. Put a high price, shoot them down in the streets, threaten to shoot them down, send the police to beat them up. Therefore, if they want to fight back against that, they got to prepare to carry the struggle to a higher level. And the opposition and the people are not in a position to do that right now. Therefore, I will again. So that is his thing. I have been working for him for the last two decades.
I don't buy into the idea that we're not in a position to take the struggle to higher levels. I mean, the amount of nonsense you see these youngsters carrying on with around the place, I mean,
it is no doubt that we have more capacity, organized and unorganized, in our community to fight. But in politics, that have to be organized to political objective.
I know.
And that is what we don't have.
Okay.
So most of the energy is spread in foolishness. Okay? But you see, all is not lost, All is not lost, because a lot of young people have a very clear sense of where the struggle should go. But for me, as an elder, and I've seen what happened in the struggle against the extrajudicial killings. When they start to kill black people here willy-nilly, I was very into like a column fighting them, fighting GRA, them saying there's an institutional problem, it's not necessarily a racial political problem, and the PPP, blah, 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 blah. But once black youth decide we fight them back, shoot back. The whole ball game changed. And up to now, the state haven't been able to disarm totally those young people. It's an important political development that those young people say illiterate, they ain't got sense, there's thiefmen, there's criminals, they hold the PPP state for umpteen years, and to date, they still have the weapons that the PPP state have been unable, to dispossess them of. Now that is a significant political achievement by people who have no political sense, as it's being said. And all of these generals and semi-generals and people got the sun horse and his horse and all kinds of horse can't put together anything, that whole anything together.
That's the point I'm making, because we have a lot of shooting up at funerals, parties, and
but this happens with press here. When people are oppressed, and they don't have a direction to vent the oppression against the oppressor, they turn to use it against themselves. It's a natural human behavior. That is why leadership has got to say, look, these people, tensions building up. And we got to direct it in a positive direction, because what will happen? They will turn back for themselves, they will turn back for me. And that's basically what's going on here. As I said it elsewhere, if you watch Palestine, man, the Palestinian struggle is a classical struggle about leadership and the responsibility of leadership. Every Palestinian leader, whether they're in Hamas, or whatever it's called, the other one, PLO, know that if we don't encourage our young people to stone the Israeli army, and if we don't encourage every now and then to fire some missiles into Israel, the Palestinian struggle done. It's dead. And they know that we got to do that. And they know the Israelis going to target me and the family, and they're going to send a warplane and blow the house up. And the chances are we dead too. But we can't stop doing what we got to do. The commitment to the struggle with people is so firm that we know as leaders we got to put real life on the line. That is leadership. So when a Palestinian leader decide that there must be more uprising and resistance against the Israelis, they know they're dead. They're as good as dead. But they know they got to do it in order to save the Palestinian struggle. Now we ain't reached that level, but I'm just trying to draw the parallels about leadership. Guyana ain't reached that level. But real leaders has to know that leadership has to be by example. And you have to take risks. We got some political leaders who never spend a day in jail, never spend a day in lockup. The police never lashed them the bottom on their foot. I got a fracture in the foot, okay, I got sting in the head. I sleep in all the police lockup across this East Coast and Georgetown. So we got leaders in politics that never ever suffer. And that is the problem, that the politics are so degenerate to sweetness that all people want to end the politics for power and privilege, not to service and to make sacrifice. And that is the fundamental problem we have in the country. And we have treachery in it. Because, I'll be frank, the danger you have in Guyana, if Ogunseye and Dion go outside there and we begin to get traction and the PNC don't like it, somebody in the PNC will call the PPP and they will talk and they decide how to cut you and me through them. That is the level of this country then. The ruling elite in the country is not like in Venezuela. In Venezuela, the Chavez people know that if the other side is coming to power, we are in jail. Because we got them in jail. So the stakes high, and that's about the ruling elite from the opposition and the government. The conflict at which a point where they got each other in jail. And each other know if the other got power, I don't go in jail cell. In Guyana, the PNC, the PPP ruling elite have a degree of comfort. Okay, that they enjoy and they promote. That make it difficult, okay, for people outside those circles to really make a real significant impact on the politics. They see themselves as a ruling group and they will come and unite against you. So that's why our politics are more difficult. And those are the parts of the politics that doesn't often get public discourse. When you push me today, and you're going to carry it in directions that I would not probably want to carry normally. But that is part of the problem.
All right. I was just signal that time is on us. But I think the discourse was pretty enlightening, and we need to have these kinds of frank discussions so that we understand where it is that we are. And I think our push for the organization, because a lot of these old soldiers, I mean, they come to you, they say, I's a old soldier, and like this, like that, and they talk of how dangerous, how much training they have, and all of them out there, and it's still taking a whole lot of, they gotta do, let me vex. I don't know when they can get vexed. You understand? So, so boasting about what you did and what knowledge you have, teach the young people, them youngsters in Palestine know how to set up a little thing that they could, use and send a message to somebody, but we ain't doing nothing. All we're doing is talking. We gotta take the struggle forward and let them understand that we mean business. So, Ogun, it's been a pleasure being here with you on this program, and we will always be revolutionary in our thinking. We don't believe that in this country peace is going to bring anything. We've got to buck the horse in order to bring the changes that we need. And the sooner we do that, the better. All right, to the people out there, it's been a pleasure being with you again. Our call for a preparation for battle is still on. And we must speak to our brothers in the armed forces to tell them that, look, when the time comes, you know what to do, that you must not be the ones to be trampling upon the backs of your brothers, that this struggle is also a struggle for you. Do have a good night. See you next week. Same time, same channel for another program of Walter Rodney Groundings. God bless.